Let me ask you something that might sting a little. How many times have you set a goal, maybe to save a certain amount of money, get fit, launch a business, and a few months later, you find yourself exactly where you started, maybe even worse off? Be honest, because I've been there. And I'll tell you this, your goals might be the very reason you're not getting ahead. Sounds crazy, right? After all, we've been fed this idea our whole lives. Set goals, stay focused, push hard, and you'll succeed. But what if that's a lie? What if that's a broken formula designed not to lift you up, but to hold you back? Let me take you back 40 years. I was sitting in a cheap hotel room with a broken watch, a maxed-out credit card, and a notebook full of dreams. I had goals, all right, big ones. I wanted the car, the penthouse, the million-dollar business. But there I was, broke, frustrated, angry. Not because I didn't try hard enough, but because the very way I thought about success was wrong. And the truth hit me like a freight train when I stumbled upon the words of Jim Rohn. He said, "The real value of setting a goal is not in achieving it, but in the person you become by trying to achieve it." That one sentence flipped everything upside down. It was the beginning of a new life. We've been conditioned to believe that goals are finish lines, like a trophy at the end of a race. We say, once I hit 100K, I'll be successful. Once I lose 30 pounds, I'll be happy. Once I own that house, I'll feel secure. But here's the cold reality. Most people don't reach those goals. And even when they do, the high lasts about as long as a cup of coffee. Why? Because the focus is all wrong. You're chasing the thing instead of becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts the thing.
Let me break it down even further. When you say, "I want to be a millionaire," you're focusing on the end product. That's outcome thinking. But outcomes don't build success. Habits do. Identity does. Systems do. See, nobody stumbles into lasting wealth just by visualizing a number in their head. They build it, brick by brick, through who they become. Someone who's disciplined with money, who thinks long-term, who makes strategic decisions under pressure, who learns from failure without folding. Those are traits. And traits are not achieved by setting goals. They're forged by living systems. That's why so many people feel empty even after they check the boxes. They got the thing, but they never became more. They never evolved. And so they self-sabotage, or they start chasing a new, shinier goal, stuck in a cycle of more, never enough. But what if you flipped the script? What if instead of obsessing over what you want to have, you started obsessing over who you need to become? Because here's what I learned the hard way. When you build yourself, the results come as a byproduct. You don't chase the million. You become someone who naturally builds, grows, and maintains wealth. You don't chase validation. You become someone who acts from principle and internal confidence. It's not sexy. It's not instant, but it's real and it's permanent.
Let me ask you this. Who are you becoming right now? Not what you want, but who are you turning into day by day, decision by decision? That question will shape your entire future. Now, I want to take you deeper because if this first idea made your brain itch a little, what's coming next might just blow the doors off the way you think about ambition altogether. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow and every goal you've ever written down, every number, every achievement, every milestone, it's all been granted to you instantly. You've got the money, the body, the lifestyle, the recognition. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's the twist. You're still the exact same person you were yesterday. Same habits, same fears, same mindset. How long do you think you'll keep it all? This is the trap nobody talks about. The reason most lottery winners go broke in 5 years. The reason athletes who reach the top flame out fast. The reason entrepreneurs build multi-million-dollar businesses and still feel like frauds. It's because having what you want
without becoming who you need to be is a recipe for collapse. You see, results don't stick to people, they stick to identities. And if your identity doesn't match your result, that result will slip right through your fingers.
We live in a culture that glorifies the end product. Social media shows us the Lamborghini, not the 10 years of waking up at 5 a.m. We idolize the highlight reel and ignore the process. But here's the truth. The process is the only place where real transformation happens. That's where character is built. That's where resilience is forged. That's where you either sharpen into someone worth following or you crumble under the weight of your own illusions. Let me be blunt. If your only motivation is to get something, you're already behind. Because getting is temporary. It fades. But becoming, that lasts. That grows. That multiplies. Goals are seductive because they promise instant meaning. But meaning isn't found at the finish line. It's earned in the trenches, day after day, when nobody's clapping, nobody's watching, and quitting would be so easy. So here's my challenge to you. Stop asking, what do I want to achieve? Start asking, what kind of person achieves things like that effortlessly? If you admire someone, don't envy what they have. Study who they are, how they think, how they respond to pressure, what habits they protect, what standards they refuse to lower. That's the blueprint.
Let me ask you something direct. How do you currently define success? Is it something you cross off a list, or is it a standard you live by every day, even when there's no reward in sight? Be honest, because the way you answer that reveals whether you're chasing an illusion or you're building something real. And here's where the trap gets even deeper. Goals can actually work against you. Wait, what? That's right. In some cases, setting a goal can create more anxiety, more pressure, and more paralysis. Think about it. You set a big, lofty goal. It's so far out of reach that every day you're reminded how far you are from it. You beat yourself up for not being closer. You feel like a failure before you've even started. That kind of mental friction kills momentum. And worse, it convinces you that progress is always someday, never now. But success doesn't happen someday. It happens in moments. Repeated, consistent, disciplined moments. When you decide, today I train like someone who's already achieved it. Today I act like someone who already owns it. Today I speak, think, and move like the person I'm becoming, not the one I used to be.
Because the truth is, you don't rise to your goals. You fall to your systems. And if your system is based on stress, shame, and scarcity, it doesn't matter how big your goals are. You will sabotage them every time. So here's the question you need to wrestle with. Are your goals building you, or are they breaking you? Are they stretching your identity, or are they reinforcing your insecurities? Because if your goals make you feel smaller, not stronger, you're playing the wrong game. And if that question hits a little too close to home, good. That means you're ready for the next shift. The shift from being a goal chaser to becoming a system builder. And in the next section, I'll show you exactly what that looks like. Let me tell you one of the most dangerous lies in the world of personal growth. And it's a lie you've probably heard your entire life. The lie is this: you just need to set clearer goals. That's what they say. Your goals aren't working? Make them SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Sound familiar? You hear it in schools, in business seminars, even from motivational speakers. But what nobody tells you is that this framework, this obsession with hyper-defined outcomes, can quietly destroy your confidence, your drive, and your belief in your own potential. Here's why. When you obsess over clarity and deadlines, you trap yourself in a narrow window of success. You say, I'll be successful if I make $10,000 in 3 months. But what happens if you make $9,500? Technically, you failed. But in reality, you made huge progress. You learned, you moved forward, you built momentum. Still, your brain says, I missed the mark, and instead of feeling empowered, you feel defeated. That's the paradox of traditional goal setting. It punishes growth that doesn't fit inside the frame. Let me get even more real with you. Some of the most frustrated, anxious, burned out people I've met had the most well-defined goals. They were detailed, scheduled, color-coded. But every morning they woke up feeling behind. Every evening they went to sleep feeling inadequate. Because their goals weren't connected to identity. They were just numbers on a scoreboard. And numbers don't care about your journey. They don't care about your mindset, your discipline, your quiet victories. They only care if you won. And if you didn't, you're a failure. That's toxic, and it's wrong. Now, contrast that with someone who's living by a system. Let's say their intention is to become a person who creates value every single day. They wake up and ask, how do I create value today? They write, they build, they connect, they learn. There's no arbitrary finish line, just consistent movement in the right direction. And guess what? That kind of person eventually blows past the goals that others chase desperately, because they're not chasing, they're becoming. They're not measuring worth by outcomes, they're aligning their behavior with who they choose to be. This is exactly what Jim Rohn meant when he said, don't set a goal to make $1 million for the money. Set it for the person you'll have to become to earn it. Because the person who earns $1 million is fundamentally different from the person who wishes for it. That person thinks differently, makes decisions differently, uses time differently. That person isn't waiting for success, they're living in alignment with it already. So why are we still teaching people to fixate on external results? Why do we keep handing them checklists and deadlines instead of principles and process? I'll tell you why. Because it's easy to sell. Lose 10 pounds in 30 days. Make 5K in 1 month. It's seductive. It promises control. But it's a lie, dressed up as strategy. What's harder to sell, but infinitely more powerful, is becoming someone who trains consistently, eats with intention, builds skills patiently, and honors the long game. That doesn't get clicks. That doesn't go viral. But that's what actually builds a life. And that brings me to one of the most important shifts you'll ever make in how you think about success. It's the shift from asking, what do I want, to asking, what kind of person would naturally attract those results without chasing them? That's the anti-goal mindset. That's the foundation of everything Jim Rohn was trying to teach. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now, you might be wondering, all right, I get the concept, but how do I actually live it? That's the next piece, because the anti-goal isn't just philosophy, it's a practical, daily way of operating. And once you master it, you'll stop chasing success because you'll start becoming the kind of person success chases instead. Let's talk about one of the most powerful lines ever spoken in the world of personal development. It's not flashy, it's not dramatic, but it contains the blueprint for everything you've ever wanted. Jim Rohn said, "The real value of setting a goal is not in achieving it, but in the person you become by trying to achieve it." Now, pause for a second. Really let that sink in, because if you grasp the depth of that idea, it can change the entire way you approach your life, your work, your money, your relationships, everything. Most people miss it. They hear it, nod, maybe even write it down, but then go right back to obsessing over the result, because becoming is invisible. Achieving is loud, and we live in a world addicted to noise. But what Rohn understood, and what most people never learn, is that lasting success is always internal first. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. Let me put it to you this way. A man who becomes organized, disciplined, and focused may set a goal to earn 6 figures, but even if he only makes half that, he's still powerful. Why? Because those traits don't disappear. They compound.
They elevate him in every area of life. Now, contrast that with the man who stumbles into success by accident, by luck, or by chasing trends. He might hit a temporary win, but without the internal foundation, he loses it fast. This is why you see people get rich and then go broke, why relationships fall apart right after the wedding, why fame destroys the unprepared, because results are never enough to hold up what identity isn't strong enough to carry.
So here's the hard truth. If your goals are purely about acquisition, about proving something, showing off, escaping your current life, you're setting yourself up for failure. Not because those goals are wrong, but because they're empty. They're hollow trophies. And when you finally get them, you'll realize something haunting. The world gave you what you asked for, but you're still the same person underneath. Same fear, same insecurity, same lack of peace. That's when the panic sets in. That's when people spiral. So what's the alternative? It's to stop treating goals like destinations and start treating them like mirrors. They show you what you need to work on, not to get the thing, but to grow the self. If your goal is to build $1 million business, ask yourself, what kind of person builds $1 million business consistently, ethically, and sustainably? What do they read? How do they handle stress? How do they manage their time? What do they say no to? Now, here's the kicker. You don't have to wait until you have the money to act like that person. You start becoming them now. That's the magic. That's the power. When you embody the identity before the result starts to show up naturally. Not because you forced it, but because you grew into it.
This leads us straight into one of the most overlooked reasons why goals actually trap people. They convince you that success is somewhere far away. They put it on the horizon. One day when I finally, you know that line. But systems, identity, that's here and now. That's immediate. You wake up and say, what kind of person do I want to be today? And then you practice, you live it, you build momentum in the moment. No more waiting for permission, no more living in the gap between now and someday. But let's break this down even further. What's the classic goal-setting model most people use? Picture this. You're told to set a clear goal, define exactly what you want, break it down into steps, set a deadline, then visualize the outcome. Motivation kicks in. You feel pumped. You make a big list, maybe even buy a planner or a new app, and for a few days you're on fire. But then life happens. You miss a workout. A client cancels. Your energy drops. Suddenly, the distance between you and the goal feels massive. You tell yourself, I'll start fresh next week. And before you know it, it's been 6 months and nothing's changed. Sound familiar? That's not a failure of willpower. It's a failure of structure. The problem isn't you. It's the framework. Traditional goal setting is outcome focused, and outcome focus is fragile. It can't handle chaos. It doesn't flex. But systems, identity-based systems, those bend, adapt, endure. They keep you in motion even when the storm hits. And that's what separates those who grow from those who quit. Not better goals, better foundations, better self-awareness, better alignment between who you say you want to be and how you actually live. So, if you're still clinging to that old model of goals, let me be clear. It's not just outdated, it's dangerous. Because it teaches you to ignore the journey and obsess over a snapshot. And snapshots fade. But who you're becoming? That echoes. That ripples. That changes everything. Let's talk about the real cost of chasing the wrong kind of goals, the emotional cost, the psychological weight that people carry without even realizing it. You see, when your goals are tied to outcomes you don't fully control, external success, other people's approval, even arbitrary timelines, you're not setting yourself up for motivation. You're setting yourself up for stress. You wake up every day with a scoreboard in your head. Am I closer? Am I behind? Why is it taking so long? And every time life doesn't match your plan exactly, your mind spirals. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I was stupid to even try. That's not growth. That's mental warfare. And the worst part? You call it ambition. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone sets a goal to earn $100,000 in a year. They work hard, but a recession hits, or a client pulls out, or they misjudge the market. Suddenly, they hit $72,000 instead. Most people would call that a win, but the goal-focused mind says failure. And now, instead of celebrating growth, progress, and adaptability, that person internalizes shame. I'm not good enough. I missed the mark. That's how traditional goal setting quietly erodes self-belief. It turns every step forward into a reason to feel behind.
But it gets worse, because that stress doesn't stay isolated. It bleeds. It affects how you show up for your family, your creativity, your energy, your sleep. You start chasing urgency instead of mastery. You look for shortcuts instead of sharpening your edge. And eventually, you burn out. Not because you worked too hard, but because you worked under pressure that wasn't even real. It was invented, manufactured by a model that measures growth by finish lines instead of transformation. And let's not forget the fear that comes with high-stakes goals. You set a massive target, and suddenly you're afraid to move. Because if you try and fail, it'll confirm your worst fears about yourself. So you freeze, or procrastinate, or distract yourself with fake productivity. You stay busy, but you're not bold. You stay occupied, but you're not evolving. And the longer that continues, the more your confidence withers. That's the hidden poison of chasing goals without grounding them in identity. They don't just fail to lift you, they slowly crush you under their weight. Now let's stack another layer on this. Traditional goals are also deeply dependent on things outside your control. The market, the economy, timing, people's reactions, algorithms. These are all moving targets. You can't command them. And yet we build our self-worth around whether or not we hit milestones that rely on these uncontrollable forces. That's madness. That's like blaming yourself because the wind changed direction while you were sailing. It doesn't make you a bad sailor, it means the environment shifted. But when you're goal-obsessed, you don't make room for that nuance. You just internalize failure. Again, and again, and again.
That's why shifting from outcome-based goals to identity-based systems isn't just smarter, it's saner. Because when your measure of success becomes, did I live today aligned with the person I'm becoming, you always have something to win. You can adapt, you can recover, you can course correct without collapsing. That's a whole different kind of strength. That's real confidence. And let's go deeper, because this next piece rarely gets talked about, the motives behind the goals. So many people are setting goals not out of vision, but out of insecurity. They want the money to prove they're not a failure. They want the car to finally feel respected. They want the body to punish themselves for years of shame. But here's the thing, no matter what you achieve, you cannot outrun the identity underneath it. If your goal is driven by pain, you will never feel peace when you arrive. You'll just find a new goal to chase and a new emptiness to fill. That's not success, that's emotional debt. This is why the anti-goal mindset is so powerful, because it flips the entire process. It doesn't ask, what do I need to have to feel whole? It asks, who do I need to become to live from wholeness? That's not a destination, that's a direction. That's a way of walking through life with strength, with clarity, with self-respect, regardless of what the world throws at you. So, if you're tired of feeling like your goals are cages instead of launch pads, if you're exhausted by the pressure, the comparison, the guilt of never being there yet, good. That means you're ready to build something real. Because in the next section, I'm going to show you what happens when you take back control. Not by working harder, but by building better foundations. And it starts with asking a radically different question. What does the best version of me do daily? Now, let's pull back the curtain on something most people never realize until it's too late. Many of your goals are not truly yours. They were inherited, installed, borrowed from someone else's idea of success. And that's a dangerous game to play. Because when you chase a goal that doesn't align with your core values, when your pursuit is rooted in proving something instead of building something, you end up climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. You reach the top and feel emptier than when you started. I have seen this happen more times than I can count. People who hustle for a dream job they never wanted. People who grind for money they don't know how to enjoy. People who chase fame, validation, or status only to realize they were never chasing fulfillment. They were chasing relief from feeling not enough.
Let me ask you this, and I want you to answer honestly. Where did your goals come from? Did you decide them, or did someone else hand them to you and tell you they mattered? That question alone can shake your whole foundation. Because if you're pursuing something that isn't rooted in self-awareness, in genuine purpose, in internal alignment, then no matter how hard you work, you will always feel out of sync. Always pushing, never arriving. That's the emotional burnout most people can't explain. They're working hard, doing everything right, and yet deep down, they feel disconnected. That disconnection comes from chasing symbols instead of substance. And here's the deeper trap. When goals are built on shallow motives, they tend to attract shallow results. You get the job, but you hate the environment. You get the money, but you lose your health. You gain followers, but you lose your soul. That's not growth. That's a swap. You've traded one version of discomfort for another. But when you shift from chasing to aligning, when you build your goals around identity and values, not validation and pressure, everything changes. You stop needing to prove yourself. You start choosing your path. And that's where real power begins. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, I get it. Goals can be toxic. Systems are better. Identity matters. But how do I make this shift without feeling like I'm abandoning everything I've worked for? That's a valid question. And the answer is this. You don't throw everything away. You reframe. You redefine the game you're playing. You start measuring success not by what you get, but by how consistently you live in alignment with the person you're choosing to become. That's not giving up on your ambition. That's elevating it. That's setting a standard that's bigger than any single result.
And this is the perfect moment to pause, take a breath, and zoom out. Because what we've covered so far is more than just mindset. It's a completely different model for living. And if you've been nodding along, if any of this has resonated with that quiet voice inside you that says, yes, this makes sense, this is what I've needed, then stay with me. Because what comes next isn't just theory, it's practice. It's how we take this anti-goal mindset and translate it into real daily action. Most people never make it this far. They hear an idea, get inspired, and move on. But inspiration fades. What lasts is identity. What lasts is discipline. So here's your checkpoint, a moment of clarity, a moment to ask, do I want to keep playing the same game? Chasing, stressing, measuring, missing? Or am I ready to build a new one, brick by brick, from the inside out? If the answer is yes, then good, because now we answer the next chapter, where we leave behind the illusion of control and step fully into the power of intentional design. Not fantasy, not fluff, real transformation built from within.
So let's talk about the shift, the one that separates people who burn out chasing goals from those who build unshakable momentum. It starts with one core decision. You stop focusing on the finish line and you start building the track. That's what a system is. It's the track that makes movement inevitable. It doesn't depend on how you feel today or how motivated you are this week or whether the market is cooperating. A system says, this is what I do. This is who I am. This is how I operate, regardless of the chaos outside. That's the first layer of the anti-goal mindset. You move from event-based thinking to process-based living. Most people live in a loop of sprint, crash, guilt, repeat. They get a surge of motivation, they go all in, they burn out, they beat themselves up, then they start over. You know the pattern. But systems break that cycle because a system doesn't require heroism. It requires consistency. And consistency is where the real breakthroughs happen. Let me give you a simple example. Someone sets a goal. I want to lose 20 pounds in 3 months. That's a traditional goal. But a system would say, I'm a person who trains every morning before work and fuels my body with respect. Now here's the difference. One is conditional. The other is identity-based. One ends when the number is hit. The other becomes a lifestyle. And guess which one actually sustains results? Always the system.
So what exactly is a system? It's a repeatable set of actions designed to support the kind of person you want to become. It's your environment. It's your routines. It's your standards. It's the way you respond to obstacles. And here's the kicker. It's built for the long haul. Systems don't care about perfect days. They care about repeated days. Even on your worst day, a good system keeps you aligned. It might slow down, but it never breaks. That's what makes it powerful. Now let's dig deeper into how systems work in real life. Imagine two people with the same goal. Let's say they both want to write a book. One says, I'll finish my book in 90 days. The other says, every morning at 7 a.m., I write for 45 minutes, no matter what. Who finishes the book? The one with the system. Why? Because life is unpredictable, but systems build around discipline, not emotion. One of the biggest lies in personal growth is that motivation drives progress. It doesn't. Motivation is a spark. Systems are the engine. That's why successful people don't rely on moods. They rely on structure. And that's something anyone can build, regardless of talent, background, or confidence.
And this is where things get interesting. Because once you start thinking in systems, your whole relationship with time shifts. You stop rushing. You stop chasing artificial deadlines. You stop measuring your value by speed. Instead, you focus on rhythm, consistency, alignment. You say, what can I sustain? Not just for 30 days, but for the next 5 years. That's real vision. That's legacy thinking. That's what creates exponential returns, not just in money, but in health, relationships, self-respect. Let me tell you something most people never hear. You are not failing because you're lazy. You're failing because your system is either non-existent or unsupportive. Discipline is not a personality trait. It's a structure. And when you build a structure that makes right actions easier and wrong actions harder, everything changes. You don't have to fight yourself every day. You just follow your design. That's freedom. That's what we're after. So, if you've spent your life setting goals and falling short, it's not because you lack potential. It's because you were never taught how to design a system around who you want to become. That changes now, because in the next part, I'm going to walk you through the practical mechanics, how to build systems that align with your identity, reinforce your vision, and carry you forward, even on the days when motivation disappears. Let's get practical. You've heard the theory, systems over goals, identity over outcomes, but what does this actually look like in real life? Let me show you. Imagine you're an entrepreneur trying to grow your income. A traditional goal might be make $10,000 this month. Sounds ambitious, sounds exciting, But that goal depends on a dozen things outside your control. Clients showing up, leads converting, payments clearing on time. So what happens when those things stall? You panic, you question yourself, you force decisions out of fear. Now compare that to a system. Every weekday, I spend 1 hour prospecting, I follow up with 3 past clients, I publish 1 piece of high-value content, and I analyze 1 revenue metric. That system doesn't care if today's numbers are 0 or 10 grand. It cares that you show up. And if you follow it, not only do you move forward, but you build resilience, you build momentum, you become someone who earns more, not someone who hopes for more. Or let's take fitness. Instead of saying, lose 15 pounds by summer, which sounds great until life throws a wrench into your schedule, your system becomes, I train at 7 a.m. Monday to Friday, I prep meals every Sunday, and I hit 10,000 steps daily no matter what. You're not chasing a number, you're becoming a person who honors their body. And here's the part nobody tells you. When you embody that identity consistently, the results show up anyway. Not because you obsessed over them, but because they're the natural outcome of your system.
And the magic of systems is that they take pressure off the present moment. Think about it. When all your success is tied to some big, distant goal, every day feels like a test. Did I make progress? Am I close enough? You carry this low-grade anxiety, this constant sense of being behind. But when you build a system, you win the day. You shift from stress to structure, from guilt to intention. And slowly, that rewires your brain. You stop craving external wins and start craving internal alignment. That's the real upgrade. Now here's where it gets really powerful. Systems don't just help you act, they help you become. Because the more you repeat a system, the more it reshapes your self-image. You start to say, I'm the kind of person who follows through. I'm the kind of person who shows up no matter what. And identity is sticky. Once you believe something about yourself, you act in ways that reinforce it. That's how habits become character. That's how routines become legacies. Not by setting goals, but by living systems. And here's the truth that traditional goal setting will never tell you. Results are seasonal. Discipline is forever. You might have a month where everything clicks, then 2 months where it doesn't. If your identity is built on results, you'll break. But if it's built on systems, you bend, you adapt, you adjust, and you keep moving. That's the difference between the people who succeed once and the people who succeed forever.
So if you've been stuck, frustrated, feeling like you're always almost there but never arriving, this is the moment to stop asking, how do I hit the goal? And start asking, what system would make this inevitable? Because here's the final truth for this section. You don't rise to the level of your ambition. You fall to the level of your structure. And if your structure is strong enough, the results become automatic. So let me ask you straight, what's your current system? Do you even have one? Or are you still relying on emotion, willpower, and hope? Be honest. Because in the next section, I'm going to show you exactly how to build a system that doesn't just work, it works even when you don't feel like working. And that's when the pressure finally disappears. Let's talk about the real engine behind everything we've discussed so far, identity. Because at the end of the day, your systems, your actions, your habits, they all flow from one place, who you believe you are. Not who you want to be, not who you tell people you are, who you actually believe you are deep down, especially when no one's watching. That belief drives everything. You'll never consistently act in a way that contradicts your self-image. You might fake it for a while. You might push yourself with willpower, but the moment stress hits, fatigue creeps in, or doubt shows up, your actions will collapse back to the level of your identity. That's why so many people fail to sustain success.
They try to act successful without becoming successful on the inside. So here's the shift. Instead of asking, what do I want to have? Or even, what do I need to do? You ask, who must I become to naturally live out this vision? And then you build everything around that. Not around numbers, not around timelines, around becoming. Because becoming is the only path that sticks. You can't chase goals and skip identity. That's like building a mansion on sand. It might look good for a minute, but the first storm will level everything. Let me break it down even further. You want to save money? Don't just set a savings goal. Become the kind of person who respects money, who thinks long-term, who doesn't chase status, who builds patience like muscle. You want to grow your business? Don't just chase revenue. Become the kind of person who builds trust, who solves real problems, who shows up with value even when it's inconvenient. You want to get fit? Don't just follow a workout plan. Become the kind of person who treats their body like a gift, not a punishment. That's identity-based living. That's transformation from the inside out. And here's where it gets beautiful. Identity is not something you're born with. It's something you build, one decision at a time, one standard at a time, one moment of integrity at a time. Every time you act in alignment with the person you're becoming, you cast a vote for that version of yourself. And the more votes you cast, the more that identity becomes real. Not just in your head, but in your habits, your results, your reputation. That's how confidence is built. Not by hype, but by evidence. You don't need to believe in yourself in the beginning. You just need to act like someone worth believing in. The belief will catch up. Now let's stack this with another concept that will take your progress to a whole new level. Once you've defined the identity you want to grow into, the next step is to shift your focus from what to who. Most people wake up thinking, what do I need to do today? But the better question is, who am I being today? That one question will filter everything. You'll eat differently, speak differently, spend your time differently. You'll stop tolerating things that don't align. You'll start moving with intention, not impulse. That's how you create integrity, not as a moral idea, but as a lifestyle of alignment.
Let me be clear. Identity work is not woo-woo. It's not positive affirmations or fake confidence. It's strategic. It's the foundation of all sustainable change. You're not just changing your habits, you're upgrading your operating system. And when your identity shifts, everything else follows. It's not fake it till you make it. It's embody it until you become it. That's how high performers think. That's how the most resilient people live. And the best part? You don't have to wait. You can start acting like that person today. So let me leave you with a hard question. Are your daily actions reinforcing the identity you want or the one you're trying to escape? Because the answer to that question reveals exactly where you are and where you're headed. And in the next part, I'll show you how to make that identity shift real, practical, and unshakable. Not someday, right now.
Let's break down one of the most overlooked tools for reshaping identity: habits. Not the flashy ones, not the all-or-nothing ones. The small, quiet, seemingly insignificant habits that you repeat daily without fanfare. Those are the bricks that build your character. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You need to commit to micro-actions that align with the person you're becoming. That's how identity becomes real. Not in the big wins, but in the invisible votes you cast every single day. When you drink water instead of soda, that's a vote for the identity of someone who values their health. When you invest 20 minutes reading instead of scrolling,
That's a vote for the identity of someone who prioritizes growth. When you say no to a distraction, that's a vote for the identity of someone who protects their time. None of those choices are dramatic, but repeated, they're transformative. Because over time, your brain starts to say, this is just who I am. And that belief, that internal certainty, that's when things get dangerous, in the best possible way.
Let me make this even clearer. If you try to change your life by chasing results, you're playing defense. But if you change your habits to align with a stronger identity, now you're playing offense. You're setting the rules, you're shaping the terrain, and you're stacking the odds in your favor every single day. The power of micro habits is that they compound quietly. You don't notice the shift at first, but 30 days in, your mindset is cleaner. 60 days in, your energy is sharper. 90 days in, you start moving through life with this quiet confidence that can't be faked. That's the edge. And here's the kicker. You didn't hustle harder, you aligned better. You showed up with intention, and the results just followed. Now let's talk about how these habits come together to shape your environment, because identity isn't just internal. It's also reflected in what surrounds you, what's on your desk, what's in your fridge, what's in your calendar. Every item, every routine, every default behavior is either reinforcing or eroding the person you're trying to become. Most people don't think about this. They try to change their life while keeping everything around them exactly the same. It doesn't work. You can't live like the old version of yourself and expect new results. Your systems, your space, your tools, your triggers have to evolve too. Because if your environment is fighting your identity, your willpower won't win. But if your environment supports your identity, progress becomes effortless. You don't have to force it. You just flow with it.
Let me give you an example. If you want to become someone who writes every day, your system starts the night before. You clear your desk, you close all tabs, you leave your journal open with a pen next to it, so when you wake up, there's no friction. The system does the heavy lifting. Or if you want to become someone who eats clean, you don't rely on motivation. You meal prep on Sunday. You clear the junk from your kitchen. You don't wait until 7 p.m. when you're tired and hungry to decide what to eat. That's the difference between struggling and succeeding. Anticipation, preparation, environmental control. And here's the deeper truth most people never hear. Success is not about intensity. It's about reducing friction. Make the right actions easier. Make the wrong actions harder. That's the entire game. The more you align your habits and your environment with your chosen identity, the less energy you waste resisting temptation. You're not fighting your old self. You're outgrowing it, naturally, strategically, intentionally. So here's your next question. What are the 3 small habits, the quiet, daily rituals you can start this week that align with the person you're becoming? Not to impress anyone, not to hit a metric, but to cast daily votes for the identity you're building. Because when your habits and your vision are finally speaking the same language, that's when momentum becomes unstoppable. And in the next section, I'll show you how to lock in that alignment for the long term, so you don't just start strong, you finish transformed.
Let me tell you a story I've never shared publicly. Years ago, I mentored a young man, ambitious, sharp, full of energy. He came to me with a long list of goals. I want to make $1 million in 5 years. I want to build a team. I want financial freedom. He had it all mapped out. He'd read the books, attended the seminars, followed every guru out there. But month after month, year after year, he kept falling short. Not because he lacked drive, not because he wasn't smart, but because every time he hit an obstacle, his identity cracked. His systems collapsed. He had no foundation, just goals floating in midair. One day, after another failed launch, he called me and said, "I don't get it. I'm doing everything they told me to do."
And I told him, that's the problem. You built your goals, but you never built you. So we started from scratch. I asked him, who do you want to become? Not on paper, not for Instagram, but in real life. What values do you want to embody when no one's watching? What standards do you want to hold when things go sideways? And for the first time in his life, he stopped thinking like a goal chaser and started thinking like a builder. He created systems, he built rhythms, he designed habits that reinforced who he was becoming. And the transformation? It wasn't overnight. It was quiet, gradual, but permanent. Today, he runs a thriving business, lives on his own terms, and most importantly, he respects himself, not because he hit the number, but because he became someone who no longer needed to chase it.
And that's the invitation I want to leave you with. You don't need more hustle. You don't need a better to-do list. You need alignment. You need identity. You need systems that don't collapse when life gets messy. Because it will. That's guaranteed. The only question is, who will you be when it does? So let me ask you one last time. Are you setting goals to impress others? Or are you designing a life that reflects who you truly are? Are you obsessed with results? Or are you obsessed with becoming? Because one of those roads leads to burnout, and the other leads to freedom. And if this hit you, if it challenged the way you think about success, if it made you rethink the game you've been playing, then this conversation isn't over. It's just beginning. I want you to drop a comment and tell me, what's one identity you're committed to building starting today? Then hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because we're just getting started.